Promo Insiders, the ASI Media podcast that covers the issues that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm Teresa Hegel, Executive Editor of Special Projects and Sustainability, and today I'm joined by Lindsay Cole, Director of Marketing and Communications at Ethics Merch, a distributor that specializes in ethically sourced branded merch for socially responsible organizations. Thanks so much for joining us today, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So today we're going to talk about kind of the concept of blue washing, which is something I hadn't really heard before. So we're going to define it, of course, but also how to avoid it, because usually when there's something with washing in the name, it's something you don't want to be doing. And also, we're going to go over some tips on how you can build a socially conscious business and kind of things you can do to increase the kind of S in your ESG. So I guess, why don't we just start out and talk a little bit about that all important S. So ESG is environmental, social, and governance. And I know the environmental part gets talked about a lot in sustainability, but that S is very important. So can you talk a little bit about why it's so crucial to include the social aspect of sustainability?
Sure, yeah. So we often talk about the E, as you mentioned, with eco-friendly and sustainability and conservation for products and for the environment, which is the planet part of people and planet. But we often leave out the S, which is social. So that's the communities, that's the people, that's any kind of labor, workers' rights, how people are treated, and how work affects the communities. So it's important because it's also a risk factor. There can be some labor laws and violations. And it's also where a lot of the impact is. Supporting people and communities helps those communities thrive, and it benefits everybody as a global community.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I remember from the, on Promo for the Planet, all of my board members have little kind of blurbs where you answer questions. And I think I remember you saying something like, really you can't have sustainability without considering the people that are making the goods and how they're being treated. That's so crucial to all the pieces of the puzzle. It doesn't matter if it's a t-shirt that says it's sustainable, if it's being created in unhealthy or unsafe conditions, that's not sustainable.
Exactly. They go hand in hand. So we always say people and planet, and we are the inhabitants of the planet. So it all works together.
Right, for sure. So let's go to this term blue washing. I think I've talked about greenwashing many, many times, and I think people are starting to kind of get an understanding of what that means and kind of warning signs of how to look out for it. But blue washing is sort of kind of goes hand in hand with that. What does that actually mean? What are we talking about when we talk about blue washing?
So blue washing is just an exaggerated claim about it's an ethical claim. So maybe you're saying that your company aligns with the sustainability goals for the UN and you put it on your website, but you're not doing anything. You're not taking any steps to make sure that you're sourcing products from factories or suppliers that are following these rules or taking any steps themselves to have an ethical supply chain.
And I guess some of the ways to watch out for it are probably similar to how you should kind of keep an eye on greenwashing. So looking out for very exaggerated claims or things that seem too good to be true, asking for documentation or certification, kind of making sure people are backing up their claims with, real action.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So just making sure that you're doing your due diligence to understand where the products are coming from, what these factories are all about, and that you trust that you're getting these from sources that aren't paying horrible wages or treating workers unfairly or anything like that. Even environmentally, any kind of environmental laws and other things that they aren't following.
So are there some organizations that a distributor can look to kind of learn more about socially conscious and ethical business or things that they can use to kind of learn more about this?
There are a lot of organizations out there. There's a lot of certifications too. So that would be a great place to start, is to just start thinking about which certifications maybe align with your goals as a company. There's all kinds of eco certifications and so many labor certifications, that maybe just going over the glossary of terms and looking at each one, for there's Fair Labor Association, there's also certain certifications for anything from crops to textiles to the final cut and sew. So for apparel and for different products. So I think it's important to just kind of understand that world first, and then think about your goals and which of those certifications you want to kind of lean towards, and investigate and work with suppliers to make sure they're meeting those certifications, and then maybe digging a little bit deeper on beyond certifications into how they're treating their workers and other things.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I've even seen, some suppliers and distributors will actually have kind of like trips where you can kind of go visit their factory with them, so you can actually meet some of these workers and see kind of what the conditions are, and get kind of a better sense of what's actually happening on the ground.
Right. Yeah. I think that's wonderful. We're so disconnected from the beginning product and the whole supply chain to the end user, is where distributors kind of step in. We're the middleman for that. So being able to see where a product comes from and how it works is can be really eye-opening, because a lot of us, some work remotely, we've never even been to a factory before. So having the chance to see how something's made really kind of puts it into perspective and puts the people behind it, thinking about those communities a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. So we talked a little bit about like fair labor. I mean, there's also terms like fair trade. Can you talk a little bit about what like fair labor and what fair trade kind of mean?
Sure. So fair trade was originally more geared towards farms and cooperatives and really working with smaller communities. And it split off to Fair Trade International, and then there's Fair Trade US. And so Fair Trade US would be probably a little bit more related to the promo industry, because they certify textiles and larger scale farms and things like that. So cotton farms. And so fair trade is similar, looking into the worker conditions, making sure factories are adhering by the guidelines, and there's nothing going on, by doing unannounced audits and things like that to certify these factories. And then Fair Labor Association is similar, but it's not a certification. It's just a association that they do some auditing, and they do help members to learn more about these issues and kind of dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and I mean some of the issues I guess would be um working hours that are too long, or pay that is not like livable, or like what are some other kind of things that they're looking out for when it comes to fair labor?
Oh, working conditions, like you said. Are there benefits? What is the pay? Is it living wage? What does living wage mean to you? Is it living wage in that country, or is it minimum wage and just following the laws of, the local laws? Uh, do workers have access to breaks and rest and all of this basic needs? And so just really making sure that they're following the rules and having access to those workers to find out if that's true.
Yeah. So, obviously, with promo, I think like you said, we're kind of at the distributor level, and then like at the end client level, there's a lot of steps removed from that original worker. But what kind of steps as a distributor can you take to, I guess, sort of raise awareness and make your end clients care more about that social side? Because sometimes it gets a little lost in translation, and people like maybe they say they care, but they don't care. Maybe they care less when they see what the price is. But like, what can you do to sort of like, you know, keep this conversation going and vocal, and like people, and get people to care about it?
Yeah. I think starting out with just some education, educating clients why it's important to be connected to these products. And a lot of clients come to us because really for branding and for that experience of promo. So telling that story of the workers and where it comes from, and that even maybe if you could get some personal stories of the workers, you could connecting the product to the worker tells that story even better. And I think it makes people a little more excited for these items, like especially if it's some sort of client gift or staff gift or something like that, that makes it, you can connect to these communities better. They're more apt to kind of want to spend the money. But it's just for us at Ethics, we spend a lot of time educating clients on why it's important and why
Yeah,
it costs more. What
right.
you're paying for exactly. And some factories are totally transparent about the labor costs and the overhead and everything and why they charge so much. And so we can take that and say, look, here's why you're paying more for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that the storytelling is so important just in any kind of marketing. And if you can, if, you're telling this story that is really helping people and it is a feel good story too, like that should be a win-win if you can figure out how to do it in a way that kind of moves the needle and gets people to take action. Um, so what are some tips you have for distributors to help start kind of build an ethical supply chain and make their own promo business more ethical?
Oh, I'd say just looking into where things come from, just starting out and asking the questions of just as something simple like a t-shirt. Where did this, if it was cotton, where was the cotton grown? Where was it? It's a whole long process for a t-shirt to become from cotton all the way to retail or wherever it ends up. So asking about, okay, well, where was this knit and sewn? Where was the fabric spun? Where was it dyed? What kind of, some people will get down to what kind of thread is used. Like, where did the thread come from? Where are the buttons from? So just really kind of digging deep, and you can't obsess over all these details like with every product, but just kind of starting to ask yourself these questions and thinking about it as a company of, this is a very long supply chain. We only see a very small part of it as the printed branded product at the end. What is behind the scenes before it gets to us, and kind of working with your existing relationships with suppliers to ask these questions. Where did it come before it came to you? What can you tell us about it? And
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of suppliers are pretty open about that and willing to be transparent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that the transparency is just kind of as the movement has been growing, because more and more like, end users, they want to know where these things are coming from. And we have the technology now too to make it easier to kind of have like a QR code, and then you can sort of see like the whole supply chain of a t-shirt, like where did it come from? Not saying that everybody's doing that yet, but I feel like this is something that is becoming more and more common, and it's something that you can kind of, as a distributor, you can lean on that and learn more and kind of share it with your clients. Um, well, do you have anything else that you want to add about the people aspect of sustainability? Anything we haven't covered yet?
Just that, at the end of the day, it's more about just progress and kind of like starting these conversations and seeing where it goes, because, we all don't have giant teams and departments to assess everything, but having these conversations internally and kind of just working together with your trusted suppliers is maybe eye-opening, or visiting a factory and just stepping out into that realm, as much as there's enthusiasm for the planet and for the sustainability side, kind of dabbling a little bit in the labor side would be helpful for the whole industry.
For sure, definitely. Well, Lindsay, this was such a great conversation, and I'm glad you could join us today. Once again, for ASI, I'm Teresa Hagel, and this was Promo Insiders.